with Manns Law Office, PLLC, and I thank you all for coming to join us in our webinar series. I launched this webinar series based on our 16th year business anniversary, and I dragged along my friend and partner, Athill Muhammad, to help host this series for me, and I am so glad that I did. We have had a great run and a ride with you all with some beautiful panelists who have come to share their expertise and knowledge with us. And so today, you're not going to be disappointed either, because we're back with another great panel and we are ready to move forward. And so I'm going to reintroduce to you the one and the only co-host to this webinar series, Athill Muhammad. Attorney Athill Muhammad was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science in 1985 from Lincoln University, the premier historically Black college there. And subsequently, he studied at the University of the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. Driven by his West Indian heritage, and I always have to say that because sometimes he throw on and off this accent, you know, so if you start hearing something, that's what it is. He wants you to know. And he eventually left Washington, D.C. and moved to Houston. And in December of 2001, proudly earned his doctorate of jurisprudence from Texas Southern University, Thurgood Marshall School of Law, graduating with honors and earning a listing in Who's Who among American Law Students 2001 publication. Since licensing, Mr. Muhammad has dedicated his practice to the endeavors of federal employment discrimination, civil rights matters, and representing persons accused of crimes in both federal and state court, as well as representing clients in proceedings with hearings in various federal, state administrative agencies and entities. He is a dedicated legal researcher and writer on federal and state civil and criminal writ and appeal matters, including those concerning the United States Supreme Court, the Texas Supreme Court, and the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And he has so many other wonderful things that he is engaged in, and so many organizations that he volunteers with that it is a long laundry list. But I'm just happy he's here with me today, and he will be co-hosting this webinar series with me as we continue on this journey. And so today, we're going to talk about mediation and dispute resolution, and we have a panel for you. And so because we always know over here that ladies goes first, right? And so I'm going to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to start with a friend of mine and a colleague, Alicia Fortson. Alicia Fortson is a family preservationist representing children, parents, and relatives in child welfare cases. Her trauma-informed practice addresses areas such as substance abuse recovery, mental health disabilities, and special education needs. She volunteers her professional services with the Dispute Resolution Center, Family Reunification Court, Houston Bar Association Committees, Texas Association of Family Defense Attorneys Legislative Committee, and first 3 years Houston Regional Council and Safe Babies Planning Committee. She obtained her undergraduate and law degree from the University of Texas, married for over 23 years. If that's not enough, look, you don't even have to say all the rest of that stuff. Married for over 23 years, she and her husband will soon be empty nesters as their second child has been accepted into college this fall. Yay, I'm feeling you. We kind of on the same. But let me tell you something, for a mother of 5 girls who are now all in college, they don't go away. The empty nest is never empty. They just keep coming back. Okay, but we're gonna move on. Our next special guest that we have on our panelists is a real fighter in the courts, and she has a reputation of, you want somebody good on your case, put her on there. So Attorney Stagg is a 2001 graduate of Texas Southern University, Thurgood Marshall School of Law. We got another one. Ms. Stagg has received her undergraduate degree in 1998 from Stephen F. Austin State University in political science. She is a member of the State Bar of Texas Family Law Section and is a member of the Houston Bar Association Family Law Section. Additionally, she was a member of the Family Law Berta Robin and Ends of Court, American Ends of Court, Houston Bar Association's Night Court, and continues membership in various other organizations. She is also licensed to practice in the Texas Southern District Bankruptcy Courts and the United States Courts of Appeals, Fifth Circuit. Ms. Stagg has been an adjunct professor at Houston Community College, where she taught criminal justice, government, and business law. Currently, she serves as an independent hearing examiner for the Texas Education Agency as an arbitrator for the Texas State Comptroller's Office. And she is also a partner of the law offices of James and Stagg PLLC. And I did look up and I noted that you also received an award and honor for teaching. And I was like, this lady do everything. She really does. This short bio, because I was like, before we got started, I have to learn from you. But she has so many accomplishments and honorees that she's has been presented. When I went on your website and looked at that, I'm like, man, this lady has, that's why they call her. That's why they put her on those cases. And so we're going to get to our distinguished gentleman who we have on the panel, my brother and your brother. He is the brother to all of us because he is a hard worker in our community. Let me tell you this. And so when I read this bio, you need to know that you know him, okay? And if you don't know him, you need to get to know him. Brother Willie Muhammad is a New Orleans, and I can't really say it right because they say it some kind of way. New Orleans, you have to have, you know, the accent with it. Native, so don't get on me, people. Don't jump on me. All my people from New Orleans. He is a graduate of Walter L. Cohen High School and Xavier University. He has taught in New Orleans and Baton Rouge public school systems. 2003, he was approved by the Honorable Louis Farrakhan to serve as a student minister of Muhammad Mosque number 46 and his New Orleans representative. Brother Muhammad has also worked as a mentor and instructor for 2 groups of young Black males who worked to acquire their GED. Many of the young men were able to obtain their GED and move on to better their lives. Brother Muhammad now works as a middle school history teacher in Orleans Parish School Board. Brother Willie Muhammad has a history that shows his level of commitment to his community. In 2014, he was one of the organizers for the New Orleans Man Up March, where 800+ Black men showed up to commemorate the historic Million Man March and get involved in the efforts to improve their community. In 2009, he helped to establish the New Orleans chapter of Peacekeepers, which is a diverse group of men who spend 1 hour every Saturday canvassing the violent neighborhoods in the city and squashing street beefs. This conflict resolution initiative has helped to literally save lives and prevent many other senseless physical altercations from occurring. Several years ago, the group's efforts was honored by the New Orleans City Council. Brother Willie Muhammad was recently selected by Data News Weekly, a Black-owned news publication in New Orleans, as one of its 2015 trailblazers. He was selected for his work in the city of New Orleans as a student minister of Muhammad Mosque number 46. As a result of his commitment and steadfastness, he is often called upon to address various audiences as high schools, college campuses, churches, mosques, correctional facilities, and other numerous community events. Brother Muhammad said that out of all of his accomplishments, his are making this decision to better his life by the way of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and being a committed husband and father to his family. He has a beautiful wife and some beautiful daughters as well. And so I definitely can vouch for that. That's part of one of his greatest accomplishments. But he is also on this panel, and he is one of our only panelists who has not been an attorney. All of our other panelists we have had have been attorneys, and this is a legal webinar series, but this is a special one. I'm so excited about this one because it's a webinar on mediation and dispute resolution. And some people do not know that you do not have to be an attorney. You do not have to have a law degree to be a mediator, to be a negotiator, to practice in dispute resolution, which he is doing. And he is making the streets know that mediation is something that can help save our lives. And so I'm so happy to welcome our esteemed panelists today, and we're going to go ahead and get started. And so what is a mediator? What does a mediator do? So a mediator is a neutral third party that gets involved to help parties come together to resolve conflict or dispute. That's a mediator. That you do have to have training. Let me say this, you don't have to have a law degree, but you do need training because there's strategies and there's things and there's tools to use to help people come to a understanding and to reach an agreement. Mediation, what is that? Mediation is a voluntary negotiation process between two or more disputing parties where an impartial third person, a mediator, comes in and manages the interaction, which prompts the disputing parties to understand one another and to address the underlying needs and interests of each party, such that the parties themselves, the mediator doesn't do it, the mediator is just a tool and use the tools that they have to help the parties themselves devise a feasible and durable solution that works for them. We use mediation all the time in the courtroom. We use mediation outside of the courtroom. And it is really something that I am passionate about. I am here now at the one and only Atonement Dispute Resolution Center in the historic Sunnyside, Texas. And it was so important to me to build a facility like this in our community because I know what mediation can do. And I believe that we should have these types of facilities available to us. Because if you are one of those people, and I have a lot of those people in my family, and I'm just gonna say it, and y'all could get mad at me, but I'm Black every day. We were gonna do this for Black History Month, but you all know that we had a freeze in Texas and we had to kind of deal with some emergency situations. And so we rescheduled this. But if you see, I have on my Black attire, my kente attire, and I'm ready because I'm always Black 365 days of the year, and my panel is too. So I think I can talk about Black folks, right? And Black folks, I'm going to tell you, like to sue people. I'm just going to say that because when my family learned that I was a lawyer, it's like they call me all the time. Can I sue them for this? Who we going to sue? And litigation is an expensive process. Because we talk about suing people, but I don't know if we understand that it's very expensive. It's costly. And so without having to spend a whole lot of money and go through a whole lot of drama, you can still get your concerns addressed by mediation. And it is an alternative to suing someone and going to court and having this long, drawn out battle and litigation. And it is available to us. And I want us to be able to have access to it and to have access to those people who know how to do it and to have access to the resources in our community. So I was proud to be able to put my money where my mouth is because I truly do believe that mediation and alternative dispute resolution should be made available to everyone, not just those who are able to access attorneys, but those who are able to come together and want to solve problems, okay? And so we're going to go straight into our topic for today. So panelists, how do you think the mediation or the alternative dispute resolution process can be used to handle various issues?
Well, I'll jump in and get it started here. But first, let me say thank you so much for inviting me. You know, Qiana Manns, your viewers probably know you as a good resource to our community, but I know you as a good resource to me in court. You are a jewel in court and a valuable asset. And so, of course, if you ask me to participate, I got to say yes. So with that, to the question about does mediation handle different types of situations? And to that, I'm going to give a different type of answer, something that perhaps litigators would be upset. I'm going to say no, maybe, and then yes. So by no, obviously it has to involve a situation where there's more than one person involved. And so if Big Mama decided that she wants to give her diamond ring to Susie, Susie's going to get the diamond ring. There's no mediation that's going to be appropriate in that situation. If you're trying to incorporate a business, the mediation is not appropriate. Another situation, if you're trying to do appellate type work, you can't take the judge to mediation to try to get a different type of outcome just because mediation, alternative dispute resolution is available. Now to the maybe, I'm going to say maybe on this end if things are in place. So if both parties are willing to respect the process, one of the things that is of benefit, extreme benefit to mediation is that it's a confidential process. So if one of the parties wants to have a public airing of their grievances, if they want public vindication, they want everybody to know every detail and to set an example, mediation is not going to be the tool to use because again, it's a confidential process. You can't even use the things that you learn at mediation in court if mediation fails. It's confidential. So both parties have to be willing to focus on trying to have a resolution as opposed to trying to have public vindication. Let's see, another situation might be if safety were an issue. If the parties are not able to be in a room together, especially if there's domestic violence, the Texas Family Code actually permits individuals to opt out. They cannot be required to even sit in a mediation process. It's understandable. Safety comes first. And so now to the yes part, and then I will tag in somebody else. Just about everything else can be mediated.
Thank you. And I also want to make a note that I do have a certification in inter-partner violence where we are able to, if you are trained, you are able to mediate situations where there is high conflict, where there has been some type of domestic issue, where there has been some dispute, so to speak, where there's a hierarchy or power struggle between individuals that are now trying to negotiate. And that does take training to understand and know the parties that you're dealing with and how to best resolve those types of issues. And so there is so much out there about mediation, about how you can do it, about different training classes that you can take. Like I have our brother, Minister Willie, on here who offers training classes for those individuals who are interested in conflict resolution. And so there is the ability for you, if you are interested in this type of process and to be available for people who are looking to resolve their matters through mediation, to come to a mediator and a trained mediator to resolve your issues. But I'll open up the question again to the other panelists.
Can you repeat that question, Ms. Manns? I'm sorry.
How can the alternative dispute resolution services or mediation be used in various issues to resolve various issues?
Well, I'll say that, you know, as Ms. Manns mentioned earlier, litigation is expensive, right? You can pay on the average an attorney anywhere from maybe on the low end $200 to as high as $500 to $600 per hour. So mediation is a wonderful tool if you're trying to cut your cost of litigation in order to help you to resolve those issues. I always tell people that what I value about mediation is that I would rather be a partner in designing whatever you're there for, designing the outcome of my case versus allowing a judge who doesn't know me, may see me for a couple of hours and make a decision that affects my life and possibly my children's lives. And so I would rather have a hand in that process. It may not be 100% of what you want, but it gives you an opportunity to have some say in your own affairs.
Wow, I'm sitting here and I'm learning from every response. And even what our sister said about, what she said about domestic violence, you know, people have been reaching out to us to do domestic violence, but something in me just didn't feel comfortable with it. And I was like, nah. And what she said, it just confirmed just a unexpressed feeling that I had. So I'm learning, and even what our sister Nicole said about in regards to the cost of it, from my perspective, it is definitely significant. It's definitely needed, especially in our community, you know, because we have come across people who are ready to respond in a violent way over some of the things that when you really look at it, it's like very trivial, you know? And I think in regards to our community needs it, and we need to see more examples of it and more stories of people who have come together using mediation as a way to resolve issues that they were faced with. So it's definitely significant and definitely important.
And I wanted to have this talk or this topic presented in this webinar series because I do feel that as attorneys, we use it all the time. Most courts require you to mediate, with the exception if there has been a protective order of domestic violence. But other than that, most courts do require you to mediate before you can even come to a trial or, you know, come present your matter before them on some occasion, even if it's not a trial setting. And so it is rarely talked about because I think it is a confidential process that we don't think once we mediate and we resolve the issue, there's really nothing else to talk about. And if we do mediate and don't resolve the issues, we still can't talk about it because it is a confidential process. Your mediator has a duty and has taken an oath pretty much to not divulge or develop, you know, present your information to anyone else. They cannot be called by anyone and ask what happened, who said what occurred during that session. And also the parties are under those same restrictions. So I think the actual advantages of going through that process and being a part of that process is kind of lost as well, because we don't talk about it at all. So the confidentiality of the nature of the process has made it a process that's kind of hidden, I think, in the legal community, because we don't necessarily talk about it because of that restriction, but it is available to talk about, not necessarily to talk about the substantive things that we dealt with during the mediation, but the actual process. We definitely need to do, I think, a better advertisement, a better marketing of the entire process, because I can say by what you all are saying and delivering as what you think, you know, the type of issues that mediation can handle and all of that. The main thing, and I believe Attorney Stagg mentioned this, is to be able to have a hand in resolving your conflict. And what I see as a mediator is one of the major benefits that people walk away empowered by the use of the mediation process. And by understanding, like, this was available to me to use as a part of the legal process, but it's also available outside the courtroom. And so wanted to talk about that as well. Do you have to have a filing of something to be able to avail yourself to a mediator and to the mediation process? Is there any way that mediation can be used outside of a litigation or a legal matter?
I was trying to let.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Ms. Fortson.
No. I went first last time, so I was trying to let somebody else go first this time.
Well, I saw Brother Willie unmute his.
In regards to ours, you know, the mediations that we deal with, not dealing with legal issues, is really resolving conflict, street conflict between, I'm not going to even say street conflict between two individuals, because one of the things we've come to learn when we started, we began the work of mediation here to address street conflict. But as more people in the city begin to start finding out what we were doing, I realized even more how, you know, the street conflict, that's the low-hanging fruit. We see that on the news. But we've done mediations between business people. We did a mediation between an attorney and a businessman. So it shows you that there's just a greater need, because we're always going to have conflict. And the key thing is learning the skills to be able to address them. Like, we could get together for a family outing, and unfortunately, I don't know if it was in Indianapolis where there was a I think it was a homicide, and the news reports are saying it was over the stimulus check.
Right. And so, about the work that you're doing, why did you all feel that mediation was necessary outside of the courtroom when there wasn't any filings or anyone hiring an attorney to go out? Why did you all feel that alternative dispute resolution would be helpful in that regard?
Two simple responses. One, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan wanted that to be one of the action items for the commemoration of the historic Million Man March. And then the other thing is just to do our part in reducing seeing another mother on television crying over the loss of a loved one.
And I'll answer with that, kind of going back to what Attorney Stagg said. You get to have a say in the process. There's not, if you can handle something outside or in-house within the family, if you will, instead of going and publicly putting it on display for everyone in court, that's always a better resolution. What Brother Willie, it seemed like what he was talking about too, reminded me of restorative justice. And there is a type of restorative mediation that's similar to that. And I know restorative justice right now seems to be a really hot topic on TV shows. I've seen on Law and Order, on All Rise, all of that. But again, those are type of things that can happen outside of court, because it gets to what happened, who was impacted, and what do we need to do so that we don't get here again, and how can we heal? Those are things that is not going to happen in the courtroom. You're not going to get that type of, you're not going to be heard. You're not going to be able to connect and move forward like you can in a mediation. And all of that happens outside of the courthouse.
And I was going to say, and I guess to echo kind of what Ms. Fortson said, I had never thought about mediation in the perspective that Brother Willie mentioned in doing it, you know, just from people from the street in their everyday lives. But what I do know about human beings is that we all have a desire to be heard, right? We want to be able to voice our opinion and just have somebody listen. And the benefit of a mediator is that you get a neutral person that is trained to let you be heard. They're there to listen and then hear the other side's argument, and then help to kind of put you down a middle road where you can reach a resolution, hopefully in a peaceful manner, and then feel that, like I said, you had some part in the dispute that was at hand in the first place.
You know, family, I was going to ask the question, and actually Brother Willie touched on it, with respect to mediation. Is it, for the most part, limited to disputes, let's say family law disputes or domestic disputes? And actually he sort of, you know, put it there that when he said that he was able to mediate a session between an attorney and a business owner. And so my question, even follow up on that, is mediation something that can be used in practically any disputes or any disputes in any walks of life? Or is it just for the benefit of our listeners? Or is it, for the most part, dealing with you know, if we have some disagreement, let's say a domestic disagreement or something like that. In other words, can we use it, let's say, in the employment setting? Can it be used in a contract dispute or those other things? Just for the benefit of our listeners, what say the panel?
Something Sister Alicia started off, she started off, and one of the points she made was true. In order to do the mediation, you got to have both parties that want to mediate, right? Because some people just don't want to do it, and you can't force them. And it's interesting when you Google online about mediation, the vast majority of the material that you come across is talking about handling workplace conflicts, right? And what as Sister Miss Nicole has said about people wanting to be heard, it's amazing how many people have conflicts and they never say, let's talk to one another. They're like talking about somebody through a third person, but they never sit down. In a common place you normally see it, and we bring this into training with these hip hop artists. Instead of like picking up the phone and talking directly to the person, they use Instagram, Twitter, or talk show. And it's like, just have a conversation and you can get all of this I thought, she thought, he said, and all of that stuff out of the way.
And so mediation is an opportunity and a process that can really deal with various types of issues. So it's not just family law, although those are the majority of the cases I mediate. I've also, like Brother Minister Willie, I have mediated with partners in the partnership. I have mediated with businesses and an individual who has been mishandled or felt that they were mistreated. And outside mediations of things that have not gone to litigation, through organizations where there were disagreements or conflict. And there are people who do this primarily for a living every day, and they mediate various types of issues. Mediation with school board and parents who have issues with their child's education, who believe that they're not receiving the services that they are entitled to receive from the school. So just various things that can be handled through the mediation process. And one of the reasons that we are talking about it today is to make sure that people are aware of that there are a lot of issues that can be handled through this process, which enables people to come together to talk to one another in a safe and appropriate way. And also I wanted to just present, as far as mediation concerned, I was making a joke about Black people liking to sue people. And that's just really based off my family. So you can put it on me. But my experience is that Black people are mishandled and mistreated a lot in our society, which gives them a reason and an opportunity to go forward to express that I don't feel that this was right for me. And this opportunity is available in mediation. If you have interaction with the cleaners or a business in your community, you don't necessarily have to immediately go to sue them. You can request that you all attend a mediation and that your grievance, so to speak, or your mishandling or your misrepresentation is handled in that regard. And there are so many other things with your home association. There's so many other ways that you can, of course, present that, and the other party or the other person has to be willing to submit to the process as well. But it is available for us to address some of those grievances, because a lot of the things that we are feeling that we have been mishandled or misrepresented are really actionable items, and they are true. And we really do have a right to present those grievances and to be heard. We have a right to be heard. And this is a process that enables you to be heard. And so I don't want you to leave away not thinking that, you know, this is available to you as well to address any of those things, like I said, through school, through employment, and various scenarios with, you know, interaction between gangs. We do have that in our community. We have neighbors who have disputes with neighbors and who may not have the ability to go file something because it's not an actionable legal issue, but it's an issue that's disrupting the community, the neighborhood, you know, where I can't walk on your lawn and you can't, I mean, it's things that can be put in place where persons who are involved in that type of dispute can be heard and can have a hand in resolving those things, so we can live in a peaceful way and feel that we have been honored, that we have been dealt with, and that we have been heard. And so I'm glad that that was also presented. How can people contact mediators or get to know who's mediating in their community or avail themselves to this service?
Well, in Harris County, you know, we've got, as Ms. Fortson said, that she regularly volunteers with the Domestic Resolution Center. I do the same thing. I try to volunteer there at least once or twice a month. And that's, they allow you to do the mediations there free if you're within a certain income guideline. The same thing is with the Harris County Domestic Relations Office. They will mediate for you for free if you fall within a certain income guideline. But you can certainly Google attorneys, Google mediators. On the average, you can find a mediator that may cost anywhere from $300 per side to maybe as high as $600 per side. But they're very easy to find if you're wanting to have someone help you resolve your conflict. And I assume, Ms. Manns, your organization that you work for is out there and willing to help you as well.
Yes, and so we have the Atonement and Dispute Resolution Center available with mediators who we work with throughout the city, and you can select your mediator, which is totally different than going to court because you have no choice. If your case land up in the court, that's pretty much the judge that you're going to get to hear your dispute or to listen to whatever issues that's brought before the court. But with mediation, it's a little different. You have a right to say, I want Qiana Manns to be the mediator. I want Ms. Stagg to be the mediator. I want Alicia Fortson to be the mediator. You have a right, you and the other party, of course, can agree on who can mediate. And I want to say that it does make a difference. It does make a difference feeling comfortable about the person that you are speaking with and the person that you are presenting your issues to. There are free services available for you based on your income level and, you know, your status and what it is that you can pay for mediation. So it is an opportunity to have access to legal help and representation, even if you cannot afford an attorney. And so you can take advantage of those service providers. At the Dispute Resolution Center here in Sunnyside, we will match you up with a mediator of your choice based on the list of mediators that we work with. And you can come to the center. We have been actually also allowing virtual mediations now during the pandemic, which have been very successful, I would say, in resolving some conflict during this whole pandemic, because I mean, we have enough to worry about. Wouldn't you all agree? We have enough to worry about, and to get some things settled and resolved, it's definitely a stress reliever. And it's definitely something that I have seen helps in our mental well-being to be able to resolve and close out matters that we're dealing with, because everything that we are involved in is really personal to us. And even if it's something trivial that, you know, somebody else believes that, I mean, that's petty or that doesn't mean anything, to that person, that's important. And so to have the ability to resolve those matters in a way and in an environment where you feel that you're heard and that you're listened to is a great thing for us to be able to take advantage of. And I also wanted to say this in terms of the financial benefits of it, because like I believe Attorney Stagg said, you're talking about an attorney, you'll have to pay $200 to $500 per hour. And I know those of other hues make way more than that. I think we kind of lowball ourselves, Black attorneys, and I'm just going to say that. People have been getting on me for years, like, you should be charging $400 an hour, and you should, based on your experience and what you do and all of that, and really upset with me because I've had the experience and expertise of many of those who have not, that are charging that amount for our people to retain their services. And I'm talking about right out of law school, $400 to $450 an hour. And so, you know, by the grace of God, I've had the opportunity to do this for 16 years, and I'm still $250, and it hurts me to say that, you know. And so I get spanked all the time by our elders in terms of, you know, you have value, you have experience, you have expertise that you bring to a client and you bring to a matter that you should be paid for and compensated. But I wanted to say with that, there is an alternative, because you're talking about 200 to 500, mostly, I think, on the higher end for a mediator per side than per hour. That's a huge difference. That's a huge difference when you look at the cost benefit of availing yourself to the mediation process. I also want to talk about the pros and cons, not just about the cost of it, but money is real. And everybody want to be right now where the money resides. So if that's where you want to be, then you want to save some money. So there are other pros and cons, right, to availing yourself to this process. I only see pros, but if we have the ability to give information about this process, let's give it all, so that the people are aware of the pros and cons of going through the mediation process, the arbitration process, any alternative dispute resolution process. So panelists, I'm opening it up to you.
You know, I'm kind of with you. I get chastised a lot as well for not having increased my fees, but that's not where my heart is necessarily, or where my success is driven from. So I'm in the same way. And so with that in mind, I'm still going to give a few more tips on how to reduce the fees even further. And so with that, if you have an attorney, or if you are going to a mediation, one way that you can even reduce the cost further is to come prepared. Make sure that you bring everything that you need to have with you so that you can make a final decision. If you have to say, "Ooh, let me wait and let me go find that paperwork so I can see how much this really costs, this, that, and the other," that's just going to drag it out. A lot of times mediators will charge you for half a day, use it or lose it, or a full day, use it or lose it. But that's still a lot less expensive than going for multiple days in a trial. There's a whole lengthy process that goes along with even getting to the trial. You're going to far exceed your budget, if you will, if you end up going that route, which is why it's always a benefit to at least try mediation. A lot of times, too, attorneys will include that as part of their process, that you can discuss with them, you know, hey, can we try mediation? And then if that doesn't work, can we continue to work together and go on from there? That too will reduce your fees if it needs to happen that way. Now the cost is time. I know I just talked about it can be short, but you have to be prepared to spend time. Don't let anger, when you're hungry and you get angry, take some snacks with you, do what you need to do just so that you don't make a rushed decision and then later on regret it. So those are just different ways that kind of came to my mind on how you can save yourself and maximize your time when you're at mediation.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to talk about, kind of give a picture of the process for those who are still like, mediation, what is she talking about? What does this look like? And so our mediators know that you have to get prepared as a mediator, because you're dealing with people and different personalities. And Brother Minister Willie, you can speak on this with, going out in the community to be able to deal with various personalities. We're talking about entertainers. We're talking about government officials. We're talking about people from all walks of life, right? And you are there to help them reach an agreement. But sometimes, like I said, you have power struggles, and it doesn't really have to do anything about domestic violence, any type of violence in the past. Sometimes you have, the big CEO and the new rapper coming in. There's so many levels and personalities that you come into contact with as a mediator, and you have to know how to handle them, and you have to know, what role and what hat you have to put on when you go. Sometimes mediation begin together, and sometimes they don't. So sometimes we'll have a joint session where the individuals are all together. Those who have the dispute are all together talking, and we, are able to resolve it like that. And sometimes they never see each other. You may go to a mediation where you only see the mediator, and the mediator is going back and forth, and these are caucuses, is what they're called, when the mediator is just meeting with the individual party or parties. Sometimes there's more than one person on either side of the dispute. Sometimes there's a group of people, and the mediator is going from one room to the next. And in these virtual hallways, it's something special when you're putting people in these virtual rooms and then clicking out of this one and going into that one. But with modern technology, we're able to do it all, but it's still the same type of process where the mediator is going from one room to another one, so to speak, from one party to another party, to relay and convey messages, to bring back proposals and offers, and to try to help bring some common ground to both of their interests, to all of their interests, to every interest that's being presented, and that we have the ability to use our tools and our strategies to bring everyone closer to the middle. And so I always typically say, if you leave here and you don't get everything that you want, I've done my job, because it is a negotiation process. And it is a give and a take. It is a let go. It is a push a little harder, sometimes type of scenario. And so I just wanted you all as mediators and negotiators to kind of give some scenarios and examples of your mediation style, things that you've seen in mediation, and kind of give the people a real reality and a view of what the process looks like.
I mean, I'll say with us, I think what we started off doing, one of the things that we do, we have a hotline, right? We didn't do a 1-800 hotline, but it's a hotline with an area code with the city of New Orleans. And we have used radio ads, billboards, social media to promote it. But most of our calls come from people, from the personal relationships we've established in the cities. Either some people know us personally, or they know one of our mediators, right? And the simple steps is we first want to have a sit down. We have individual meetings with each conflicting party to get all of the information. And in the process of doing that, you begin to start seeing where the misunderstanding or the disrespect and the misperception is taking place. And they don't realize it because they're not talking to one another, right? And so once we do that, depending on the nature of the conflict, if there's a high likelihood of violence has taken place, somebody's been shot, they've gotten into a physical altercation or threats, we bring them to a neutral environment where everybody who comes in, they're searched. So make sure that there's no weapons. And then we just get them to come to do what they haven't been doing, which is really, as she said, to hear one another. And then to get the opportunity for them to air what they feel their grievance is. And one of the things that we stress with our mediators is that if we're doing more talking than the people that we're trying to help, then we're there for some other stuff. Right? Like we tell people, this is not the place for you to do a sermon or do a lecture. You should do more listening. And it's interesting. One of my favorite reality shows, she's not doing it anymore, is Iyanla Vanzant, Fix My Life, right? One of the things I noticed with her is that she sometimes has to teach people things that you would think that they will know. Like she might say to a father and who has an issue with his son, tell him you apologize. She actually gives them the words to say. So sometimes in our mediations, sometimes we have to give them the words to say to the other person, or, hey, did you understand? Or we may ask them a question. Can you repeat back to us what he said you did that offended him? Because some of them come up in environments where their conflict resolution skill is pick up something to bust them in the head or get a gun. So it's also a learning process where we're also teaching them how to resolve. But once they do that, we don't tell them now y'all get up and hug each other or y'all take a picture. No, that's on them if they want to do that. Our major goal is to get them to come to an agreement that we're not going to try to do anything violent towards one another. And we just go from there. Then after that, we follow up and to make sure that nobody has violated any of the terms.
Thank you. That really gave a picture and made it real. And you can see the effort and the work and even the effort of the people, of the individuals who come and submit themselves to the process of what it takes. So someone is not timid or have anxiety about engaging in this process, that they can hear, that they can see, kind of feel what the process is like. And so thank you for that. Did anyone else have anything to add?
Well, I can always talk. So some of the cases, a lot of the cases that I've dealt with involve tenant landlord or even homeowners with who is involved, you're parking in my spot or you're playing your music too loud, those type of situations. But one of the examples that kind of stood out to me was when a landlord tenant issue came up. Tenant wasn't paying on time, about to get put out, we're going to, eviction. But when they were able to sit down and talk, they were able to realize some of the hardships that tenant had been going through. And then that empathy and compassion came through with the landlord to say, okay, I want to support you because you are a part of my community too. How can we do this? And that tenant was able to look that person in the eye and say, I make a commitment to you on this process, and we're now going to be able to work together. Maybe I'm not making all my payments like I wanted to, but I'm going to do what I can, and then I'm going to do something extra for you. So both parties were able to talk things through, and that came about after they each had their say. And then as the mediator, you start to ask some of the questions just to get them to keep talking, and I like sometimes co-mediating, where there's another mediator with me so that we can look at, one person will look for the body language perhaps of what's going on with the individuals, and the other will really grasp it and try to write down, take the notes, so that at the end of the day, they can have something written down that they can both walk away with. But those are some of the processes that I've seen just kind of happen where the light bulb goes off and they can come together to a resolution that they each agree with.
Wow, thank you for that. I have a question for social media. Those who are watching us on social media, thank you so much for your questions and for joining us this afternoon. So during the pandemic, have you all seen a rise in the need for mediation and conflict resolution? One of our viewers asked. That's
what I started off. If after this is over, there's a mediation that I have to participate in. But what we have received a lot of inquiries about have been domestic violence. We received a lot. And like I said, just because I just wasn't personally, I'm not personally comfortable just after we sit down and just think everybody can go back into the home afterwards. I felt like more would be needed, like people getting therapy, some other stuff, you know. So, but we received a lot of inquiries regarding domestic violence issues.
Definitely mediation requests have gone up. With the pandemic, you can't really get into the courts right now anyway. There is a long line, especially if you want a jury trial. You know, they were setting those things off a year or more. And so your day in court might be longer than your issue. And so there's definitely been an increase of people wanting to just go ahead and have that resolution take place. I wanted to come back to, I know I raised about how with domestic violence that may not be appropriate, but the emphasis was on may. I think that there can be situations where you can work things out so that everyone can be safe. And that to me is key. You don't want to have a situation where you bring someone in just to be intimidated, just to set up an opportunity for someone to get hurt, either there at the mediation or even afterwards. And so the safety is a big issue, but it can be done safely. Attorney Manns talked about the caucus. Sometimes you don't even need to be in the same room with each other. You can go ahead and separate the parties and have that type of environment set up to where they can each have their say, even if it's just saying it to a mediator who is trained to listen.
Thank you. And I want to say here at the Dispute Resolution Center, we have been engaged in a lot of mediation. I have had the opportunity to mediate many matters that Ms. Fortson was saying are now not being able to be resolved, so to speak, because everyone is virtual. Pretty much in court, and the courts are backlogged based on everything that we're going through, and your trial may not be, you know, a year from now. And if you're talking about a jury trial, you just need to just go somewhere and just have a seat and, you know, drink some tea or something, because that's not happening anytime soon for the most part with civil matters and all of that. And so people are like, no, I am ready. What can I do? I'm willing to submit to this process if this means that I will have this matter resolved. And the courts are pushing people, really, because it is an alternative way to have your dispute resolved. And so I have been, you know, thankfully, gratefully mediating, I would say more cases than I've ever had during the pandemic, because there is a demand for it from the people, and there is a demand for it from the court system as well, because mediators help with getting their docket off of maximum capacity, where everybody has to come in and have a trial or have a hearing, because the mediator can now take some of those conflicts or those matters and handle them, and they can take them off of their docket because they've been resolved. And so I have had the ability to try to learn this Zoom kind of life, but I do see that during the pandemic that there has been a real need and desire to mediate by people who were not availing themselves to the process previously for various reasons. And I do want to touch on also the ability to have this process to solve a lot of things that are not in the courtroom. There are some things that we need to address that have not gone to litigation, but that can be addressed in the mediation process. And as we know, during the pandemic, everyone is on edge. Everyone is on edge. And so it is something that will assist us in our community to be able to eliminate some of these things that we're seeing. And I don't know how it is in New Orleans, but we're seeing some things that happen here in Houston that I haven't seen before. People going and shooting up, their families. And, you have a friend who's talking about something, like I said, really minor, and it escalates to, a stabbing or a kidnapping of a child. I mean, things are just really kind of getting out of hand because people do not have the ability to stabilize themselves with a neutral person to hear each other out and to resolve things that can be easily and effectively resolved by someone who's trained to help to do that. And there has been a rise in violence, and not just domestic violence, people who don't even know each other, because we are all on edge. And the slightest thing of being disagreeable with someone can place people at risk. And a mediator is a person in this hour that is very valuable to help in that regards, to alleviate some of these things that we're seeing that have been on the rise since this pandemic. And so I have our last question, and I'm going to take our question from social media, because I'm so thankful that you all have shared your Saturday with us. And the panelists are here definitely giving you valuable information for you and your family. And I hope that you share and tag and do all of those things that will get this webinar seen by other people who could take advantage of the information that's being shared. And so our last question from our social media viewer is, how do you come to an agreement when both people truly believe that they are correct without invalidating a person's position?
Well, I was going to say that, as a mediator, usually for family law cases, if we're talking about those types of cases, you typically start off with the person who's filed the lawsuit, which is called the petitioner in family law cases. And as a mediator, you can go in there and you hear their story and you just believe everything they're telling you, right? It sounds legitimate. And then you go into the respondent, the other party's room, and you hear their story and it sounds legitimate. But being a mediator, as I said, everybody wants to be heard and listened to. Part of that, as Brother Willie said, is that if you're talking too much, you're not doing your job. So part of it is listening to people and then going back and forth between the parties and sharing some of what the other party has said so that now they can see maybe another view. But the other part, if you're mediating in a family law or a litigation aspect, is that typically that mediator is an attorney. And so it may be that the other person hasn't heard maybe the law, what a judge might be likely to do. So you are able to put another perspective that they're able to hear that allows them to reach an agreement. Most cases, believe it or not, are settled in mediation. And I have clients that think, oh, I'm never going to reach an agreement with my spouse. It's no way we're going to do that. And I have to remind them, let's just go through the process. Let's go through the process and let it work for you. And 9 times out of 10, cases settle in mediation. So it really is a fruitful, beneficial process. As Ms. Manns said, those judges want you to go through that process because they know that they want to clear up their docket. And so I would encourage anybody that for sure is in litigation to try to mediate the case. But I think Brother Willie's platform and the way that he's doing it is really ingenious. And I had never thought about that. And it's, I think, something that the Black community, it probably in every major city could benefit from.
Regarding, it was a question was if everybody think that they are right. I don't know. I was like, listen, if everybody was 100% right, I don't think we'll be sitting at this table. I'll just say that, right? But I think in regards to, because people have their perspective and they feel like, man, I'm right. But in the end, I forgot who said it, by coming together doing this mediation, you at least get a role, you play a role in helping to shape the outcome. So even if you think you're 100% right and they think they're 100% right, at some point we have to come together and find out what's an outcome that's beneficial to everybody. And as you said too, Sister Qiana, you said that if they leave feeling like they got everything, then you didn't do your job, right? And so I think it's just getting people to understand that the reality of it is like, you can't be 100% right, so just getting, and you said something so key, Ms. The last name Stagg, right? Am I pronouncing it right? One of the things that we tell our mediators is that during these mediations, there's going to come a period where it's going to feel like this is a waste of our time. These people don't want to resolve anything. And one of the things that we stress to them is just stay committed to the process. Stay committed to the process. I know it feels like we just going over and over, but really it's them just wanting to get out what they have in them. And if we stay committed to the process, the probability of us coming to some type of outcome, it happens, but you have to stay committed.
Well, I'll jump in with an example. It's just a classic example of divorcing couples. So in my hypothetical, or the training scenario that we have, two neighbors grew up together, they got married, husband and wife, and unfortunately now they're about to divorce. So they're divorcing, they've been able to agree about just about everything, but then the husband, for whatever reason, he really wants the grandmother's snack tray that she gave to them when they got married. The grandmother is now passed, and so the wife is thinking, that's my grandmama, why you want her stuff? No, that's mine, you're not gonna get it. And you would think, 100% right, 100% right, that's her grandmother, that's the way it is. But then through the mediation process, you learn when the husband was growing up, his parents used to fight. He would go next door and the grandmama would serve him snacks on that tray. She became his grandmama too. And now that she's gone, that's like the only thing that he would have of her in that memory. And so, of course, in the scenario, it turns out well. And the wife, she understands, and in fact, doesn't just give him the tray, but she can go ahead and give him the other things too that go along with the tray. 100% right, but then she understood his heart and she was able to respond in 100% different manner. The other thing that could happen with individuals, you may not be able to agree on everything in mediation, but if you can narrow down what you disagree on and come to some agreements, maybe you came in with 10 points or 10 things that you had to work out. If you can work out even 1, 2, or 3, you've made some progress. You've been able to resolve even that. You've reduced your fees if you end up having to go to trial because you've narrowed the scope of what the issues are left for the trial court to determine. But it's still possible to walk away from a mediation and have a win. So that's the end for me.
Thank you. That was awesome. And I'm going to say this just to wrap up this portion. By a person agreeing to submit themselves to the process, they are validating your position already. You are giving respect to them based on their position, and they're giving respect to you based on your position to sit and to listen and to work through it and to resolve it. They are giving you the respect by submitting to the process that your position is valid. So there's no invalidation at all in the process. By submitting to the process and humbling yourselves, you have indeed validated one another. And so thank you so much to our esteemed panelists for joining Manns Law Office PLLC in this webinar series. I am so passionate about mediation and dispute resolution and providing this service in the legal community, in the courtroom, and outside of the courtroom. And what I am learning is that many cultures, groups, organizations are using this process. And they're also talking about trauma centers, mediation centers, because we have so many things that we need to address in our community, that these types of centers are essential. They are essential for us to make progress and to be able to handle our affairs in an appropriate manner. So I really do. I thank you for your time and for your attention today. To all of our viewers who logged on and who had questions, if we did not get to your question, we apologize, but I really do pray that you were able to listen and to hear information concerning mediation and the mediation process. And before we leave, I do not want any of you to get off without providing your contact information of how it is that someone can contact you and the service that you provide, because you do have some substantial information that you can share with them. And we have attorneys who are dynamic attorneys in their own right, and mediators that are here on the panel who I want to be able to share their information so that you can retain them for any service that they can provide to you. So Attorney Stagg, could you provide your information and how the people can get in contact with you?
Well, you can just call me at my office number is 713-223-5811. I'll be
Yeah, I didn't hear the last part. You muted.
I'll repeat it. Sorry, 713-223-5811. Thank you.
And with myself, you can, I'm on social media as Instagram brother_Willie. Also, we can be reached at 504-500-1706. And if you want to find out more about the work that we're doing, you could just Google New Orleans Peacekeepers in the city of New Orleans, and you'll come across an article that was on the front page of the paper here that talks about the work that we did.
That's wonderful.
Excellent.
My office, the law offices of A.G. Fortson, I can be reached at 832-487-1146. We also have a website, www.agfortsonlaw.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for the work that you're doing, and continue to push mediation and to encourage those who are a part of the legal process and outside of the courtroom to submit to this process, because we know the value of it. And so you all, as our listeners, have their information, and please avail yourselves to it so that they can be of service to you. Our next segment was our Black History segment that we were going to do in February. But as I said previously, we on this panel, we Black 365 days of the year. And so we celebrate our history, we celebrate our culture every day. And so we have that opportunity to be able to share with you some information concerning Black attorneys in Houston and Texas, and the history with that. And so I'm so honored and so proud. We have a special guest here, and I'm going to have my co-host to bring him on.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Sister Qiana, and all our panelists who just was tremendous on the mediation process and everything that our community and family can avail themselves of and to. It was just tremendous, and we pray to Allah that we got an awful lot out of. In fact, I know I definitely have. And way into, as Sister Qiana was saying, our next portion of this program. You know, family, we, as Sister Qiana said, you know, we celebrate, and Black history is 365 days a year. We should never think ourselves to be boxed in to the shorter year, which is February, we should always know that no matter what, that our history is continued. We continue in our history, and there is such an awful lot of our history throughout centuries that we need to know constantly and be reminded constantly of the contributions that we have made to the state, to the country, to the world, and to the universe. And that having been said, I am so honored to introduce, and I do hope he's on. I don't see the screen yet, so I guess I may have to talk a little bit until I see him on the screen, because as soon as I finish this introduction, I would want him to join in right away, and I don't want to step on his toes or anything. So I don't know. I don't see on the screen yet, and forgive me, Sister Qiana. Do you see him on your screen? Oh, there he is. I see
He's
the
on.
name. All right, I see the
Yes.
name popping up. And we want to thank him so very much for giving us the opportunity and allowing us to hear from him and being so gracious with his valuable time. And again, I just have this distinct pleasure of introducing and reading his bio. Craig Washington was born October 12, 1941 in Longview, Texas, and graduated from Fidelity Manor High School in 1958. Working his way through college, he graduated from the Prairie View A&M University with a Bachelor of Science degree in biology in 1966. While a Panther, his activities included memberships in the Student Union, Les Beaux Arts, and the Barons of Innovation Social Club. Shortly after completing his studies at Prairie View, Mr. Washington attended Texas Southern University School of Law. While a Tiger, he captained the moot court team 1967 to 1969, was the president of the Student Bar Association from 1968 to 1969, and was a research assistant to the dean of the law school during that same time. He was also the recipient of several academic awards, including the American Jurisprudence Award for Excellence, in which he received 9 times, and the U.S. Law Week Award in 1968, and was listed in Who's Who among students in American colleges and universities in 1969, and achieved Dean's List, status 9 times. His law school studies capped off in 1969 when he graduated with honors and being the first in his class. But his career with the law school did not end there, as he would serve his alma mater as an assistant dean, an assistant professor of law upon graduation, and a distinguished visiting professor in the 2000-2001 school year. In 1972, Mr. Washington was elected to represent the 86th District of Harris County during the 63rd Texas State Legislature, and proudly served his constituents through the 70th Texas State Legislature until 1990, when he was elected to the United States House of Representatives for the 18th Congressional District, following the untimely and tragic death of his dear friend, the Honorable George Thomas Mickey Leland, being sworn in on January 12, 1990, when the 101st Congress reconvened. While in the 102nd Congress, Mr. Washington served on the Committee on the Judiciary, the Education and Labor Committee, and the Select Committee on Narcotics Abuse and Control. He also served on the Judiciary on Civil and Constitutional Rights, and the Crime and Criminal Justice Subcommittees, among others. Mr. Washington was the founding partner of the Washington and Lampley law firm, which later became the Washington, Lampley, Evans, and Barkay firm in Houston. He is licensed to practice law before the Supreme Court of Texas, the United States District Courts for the Eastern, Northern, Southern, and Western Districts of Texas, the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, and the United States Supreme Court. Mr. Washington has held memberships in the National Bar Association, the Texas Bar Association, and the Houston Lawyers Association, as well as the National Conference on Crime and Delinquency, the NAACP, and countless others, and is well known for his consistent support of civil rights and civil liberties, and for his tireless efforts to increase the participation of women and minorities in the political process. Over these many years, he has received distinguished awards from among several organizations, including the State Bar of Texas as the Outstanding Criminal Defense Lawyer of the Year in 1985, the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, where he received the Percy Foreman Lawyer of the Year Award in 2007, and the Litigation Council of the State Bar of Texas, where he received the Texas Legal Legend Award in 2012. Mr. Washington has lectured and been a panelist at death penalty seminars, race and the law symposiums, and countless other nationwide forums and conferences concerning the disadvantaged and disenfranchised and other underrepresented members of our society within the justice system. If you've ever been around or in his company, you would know that he has embraced famous historical sayings by distinguished figures, and perhaps one of his favorites is one by President Theodore Roosevelt, when President Roosevelt stated, "It's not the critic who counts, nor the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man in arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, I beg your pardon, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat." There is an annual continuing legal education seminar that was established by the Earl Carl Institute of Texas Southern University's Thurgood Marshall School of Law, bearing his name, which is entitled the Honorable Craig Washington and Senator Rodney Ellis Excellence in Indigent Defense Series, where I actually had the distinct honor at the 2015 seminar to present the topic, Ethics and Indigent Representation. You know, family, once when I had a fellow member of the bar inquire of Mr. Washington as to what he does, I recall Mr. Washington answering that he represents people accused of crimes, because although we say in this country that one is innocent until proven guilty, Mr. Washington practices that, and I try my very best to do the same. With all this being said, without a shred of embellishment, I am truly honored to present to some and introduce to others the proud father of 5 wonderful children, Craig Jr., Cheval, Alex, Sydney, and Christopher, and the proud grandfather of 4, Craig III, Cameron, and Princesses Kristen and Carrie. I'm proud and so very honored to introduce again to some my dear friend, confidant, brother, mentor, and professor, the Honorable Craig A. Washington.
Unmute. Okay. I'm. This is Ned's first reader, man. I have to figure out how to unmute. Okay.
You got it.
Hey, how y'all doing?
We're doing well,
Good
sir.
to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be seen. Be blessed, y'all. Y'all down there fighting the fight.
Yes, sir.
I was listening to Sister Fortson. I never had the pleasure of meeting her, I don't think, but She got a lot of fire in her.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't want to be I wouldn't want to be at the other table in the courtroom with her, goodness of life. Yeah, y'all got that torch and went on with it. I'm glad. I've tried cases with Brother Athill, and he's a wonderful man. He's got that fire. Y'all doing it. All I did was knock down a few hedges and make the road a little bit easier. That's all. Y'all got to take it the rest of the way. Yeah.
And we appreciate you for that. And it's just an honor for Manns Law Office for you to join us in this webinar series. And we are definitely appreciative of you taking your time to be on the webinar with us. I mean, he read that bio. You have lived a life, okay? You have so much that you have done, and that you're talking about paving the way. I mean, it's just remarkable, some of the things that he was able to share. And I know that's not everything. And just to have a brief introduction with you, and to hear all of the things that you've done. I was in a CLE, and they talked about the time where you all had to practice and would go to the law library and had to sit at one table. And that was the only table that was available to Black attorneys during that time, to use the facility and to do your research and all of that. And I recall as a young attorney going into the law library, because I didn't have an office, and I would do most of my research from there, and just to be able to kind of go where I wanted to go and avail myself to the literature and the books and all of that, just standing on your shoulders, just to not having to endure some of the things that you have had to endure, to be able to practice law, just to be able to do what it is that you're doing. So it's an honor for me to have you on here, and to share with our viewers the legacy that you have brought to the practice of law in Texas for Black attorneys. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Sister Qiana. I just did, I never set out to do any of this. I lived in First Ward in Houston, right off of Houston Avenue on Winter Street, right by the railroad track. And my mother ran a Head Start program for one child. She was a beautician, and they didn't have Head Start. That's a joke. So I was at home with her. My daddy was off in the Marine Corps, off in the Pacific. And so in between, I think they probably call that bootlegging, because I don't think she had a beauty shop, but in between customers, sometimes she would read to me. So she read a lot of poetry and stuff like that. She was an English major, didn't get to graduate from college. But I learned how to read and write when I was 4. And I could read a newspaper, and she'd let me sit at the table, and she didn't make me say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and auntie and stuff like that. She treated me like an adult. She talked to me like an adult. And I say all that to say that finally, on Fridays, probably once or twice a month, I get to go down, take me downtown, get my hair cut, and I get to go to the picture show, we used to call it. The Lincoln Theater is the only one we could go to. And they finally trusted me enough, I thought, to let me ride the bus downtown. So I got on the bus right there on Houston Avenue and the railroad track, and put my money in, probably 2 or 3 pennies, and coming from Studewood. There were about 15, 20 Black people standing up in the back holding onto the rail of the bus, and 4 or 5 white people. I only say it because, well, I'm not a racist person. I only say white when it's important, or Black, or whatever did we use to divide God's creatures from each other, only when it's necessary, not just casually. And there were about 15, 20 empty seats. So I walked back there and asked the man how come they wasn't sitting down, and he pointed to a rail that was right over the windows of the bus, had a little slide on it. And on the back it said colored, on the front it said white. I stood up on the chair and moved the sign. And I've been defending other people and standing up for people since that day. I don't know what day that was. And nobody told me to do it. But it made perfect sense to me. If you got all these empty seats and all these people standing up and the bus turned the corner, you know, you ever ridden the bus standing up? It ain't a lot of fun. Whether rail cars, subway, New York, whatever. You got to hold on with a grip. You can't be doing nothing. You can't sit and relax. Plus they empty seats and we're all paying the same fare. So I moved the sign, and I've been moving signs since then because that's what God sent me here to do. I don't deserve no credit. That's why I don't like them long introductions. I didn't do none of that to be patted on the back. I've been in courtrooms where I walk in with my briefcase and the bailiff tell me that the audience is supposed to sit over there. And I said, well, what about me makes you think that I'm not a lawyer? Well, because of that, you can probably go most places in Texas now, and that won't happen to you. It shouldn't happen to anybody. I didn't do it because bravery is not being scared. Bravery is being scared and doing it anyway. I've been a lot of places where I've been scared. I tried a case one time. I walked out the door and the people were lining the sidewalk. It was up in Lufkin, black people. They got a little diamond in some of them old. You could see them come up there and peep through the window, but they wouldn't come in. Remind you of To Kill a Mockingbird kind of. And then when I walked out, I said, how come y'all don't come in the courtroom? So we just want to see. We ain't never seen a colored lawyer before. And this is in the 70s. I didn't get licensed until 1969. I've been some places. Anyway, anyway, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to see. I'm sitting in the last row of seats. I'm still here. I'm still alive. I got my binoculars and I'm watching y'all from the last row of seats at the back of whatever y'all call that football stadium down there. So somebody talking about money a while ago. I think Ms. Fortson was talking about. Some of these people charge too much money. I got people that I trained I had 178 mentees as of today. And they charge more than I did. And I could charge anything I want to charge, but I didn't. I didn't become a lawyer for that reason. We got to help these folk. And all of them ain't got no money. And all of them can't go to the public defender. And all of them can't get good appointed lawyers in town. And all of them can't go to help some of them. You don't have to help all of them, you go broke. But you don't have to set a quota on people that don't have money. They don't know how much a lawyer costs. They should, you know what I mean, pay what they can, pay what they can afford. But if you went into this just to make money, you're in the wrong business, or you're doing it for the wrong reason, in my opinion.
You know, Professor, as you mentioned that, I am reminded of a story that you once told me, and it truly brought tears to my eyes. And that one day you would
tears to my eyes now.
Yes, that one day you had said that you were representing people, a family, I believe it was, and they had no money, but you certainly believed in what it was that you know, in their cause is what it amounts to. And they paid you with a jar of peanuts. And you showed me that jar of peanuts. Yes, sir. I had to, Professor, because, you know, I had to, because that just shows me, and I wanted our listeners to know, and those who are still, you know, those panelists who were kind enough to join us, and of course our Black attorneys, to know, you know, the spirit, the humbling spirit that you have, and that you have instilled so much that I recall one day, and this is not, you know, I'm not, you know, taking any thunder, I hope, from anybody or and certainly you, but I recall one day that a group of people, citizens down in Texas City, had asked me to come down there years ago, and you may recall I shared this with you, that, you know, at the end of, they had some issues with the city of Texas Police Department, in that they believed they were being profiled. And at the end, you know, they had no money to pay me. And I remembered what it was that you said. And it brought tears to my eyes, because they said, Athill, you know, we don't have anything to give to you, but would you accept, and I'm not trying to be funny, family, but they said, would you accept this 2-piece chicken dinner from Kentucky Fried Chicken. I think, you know, they may have heard my stomach growling and everything when I was talking to them. But I remembered, I said, man, am I walking at least, not in the steps, but maybe am I taking one step, you know, that Professor Washington has when he was, you know, paid by the jar of peanuts. And I just, if you would not mind, sir, if it's not too embarrassing, could you just, you know, explain, you know, that, you know, what happened, you know, with the jar of peanuts, if that would not be too uncomfortable for you, sir?
Well, Gabrielle McDonald and I studied for the bar together. That's how I met her. She moved down here from New York, and everybody knows her. She was a federal judge at one time. Anyway, Mark, she was married to Mark. Anyway, she called me, and I'm thinking back on it now. I'm writing my memoirs, and the snap, it didn't make sense. She told me that there were two basketball players in Edinburgh, Texas, that were about to be put to trial without a lawyer. Warren Burnett was supposed to represent her, but he was in trial in Odessa, and the judge was threatening to put the lawyer to court without a trial. So they didn't have Google and all them devices and stuff. I got a map from Humble, that was before Exxon, figured out where Edinburgh was, and I drove down there, and I got there by 4 in the morning. I stepped in my car, and I got up and went to the men's room and put on my little suit and went in. Anyway, there were two basketball players. I ended up representing them in trial. The problem was that they didn't have any money, and it was called Pan American University at the time. This was in 1972. And they didn't have any money to pay me, and I knew that when I went down there, but they did provide a hotel room for me. I had to pay for my own meals. They ate a lot of Whataburgers that week, as it turned out. Anyway, it was a week-long trial for sexual assault, and I only mentioned race because it was important to the people down there. The young lady, they were both found not guilty. They did not sexually assault her. She was a late outcry 3 weeks later because her friends trained her, friends teased her about having had a relationship with these two basketball players, one of which was the number 3 scorer in the nation and would have probably been another Michael Jordan or something. The other was, both of them were in the top 20 basketball players in the whole nation. Anyway, they got put out of school. They got arrested. Shouldn't have been representing 2 people. I was 3 years out of law school. That was probably malfeasance on my part. I represented them. When I walked in the courtroom, you could feel the enmity. You could see the hate because she was half white and half Hispanic. You couldn't find Black people working on the garbage truck down there, changing flats at the service station. All the Black people met with me one day, and it's probably, we could get in a phone booth probably. Anyway, I understood I wasn't gonna get paid. At the end of the trial, they brought me the president of the university, and they brought me a mason jar, one of those small mason jars with a bag of peanuts in it. And I sealed them up in there, and they're still there. I knew you were gonna ask about it. I was trying to find them around there. I got my house so junky, but I still have them, I promise you. But one last thing. The trial lasted a week. During the trial, as the evidence started to come out, for instance, the guy that raped her gave her his phone number, wrote his name on the piece of paper and gave her his phone number so they could get back together. Now, what rapist would do that? Okay, walked her to her dorm down the sidewalk in front of all these people. These charges never should have been filed. It was because it was a Black guy and this person who was non-Black. Anyway, so they brought me this bag of peanuts, and I put it in a bag. But the same people that had hated me, you could see it in their eyes all week when I'd walk in the morning. Big courtroom, sort of like some, we got big aisle down the center, majestic looking courtroom should look like that. As the trial progressed, they start meeting your eye. You know when people don't want to meet your eye at the beginning, or they look at you with scorn and hate? After the trial, while the jury was out, the judge, we were back in the judge's chamber. You know, everything kind of relaxes. If you've ever been in a jury trial, things kind of change. The judge doesn't be so high and mighty with the black robe on, and I invited the DA and myself back in chambers. So we sitting back in chambers, And the bailiff came and knocked on the door and said, the jury has a verdict. It was about 4 o'clock. The judge looked at me and said, you want to start punishment this evening or in the morning? And dumb me, thinking the judge supposed to be calling the ball and strikes, he done already found him guilty. Do you want to start punishment in the morning? He was the first person out of the courtroom when they brought the jury in and the verdict was read. He left town. He wheeled himself out of that courtroom. The DA wasn't there. I was the only person present listening to the clerk read the jury verdict. My point is, those same people formed a line to the back of the courtroom out in the hall. I was in the courtroom shaking hands and getting that congratulations from the same people for an hour. And an angel was in line. I saw him, didn't know his angel. Little short man, overalls, straight out of central casting, worked with his hands, walked up to me and didn't say a word. And he handed me a note. It says, when in the book of life, your name is written, it will be written with letters of gold. I got that piece of paper. He wrote it in his own handwriting on an index card, on the back of an index card. Your name will be written with letters of gold. And I'm trying to fulfill his dream. That's all I'm doing, brother.
Wow.
That's all I'm doing.
This is so special.
It's surreal.
It is. It
It's
really
surreal.
is. And
I started law school on the last day of late registration. I went over to TSU to register to get a master's in biology on the last day of late registration. And pardon me for saying it, but my wife was nagging me. I know it's a term not supposed to use. And I said, all right, I don't want to go to Vietnam either. I had been, anyway. So I walked, we didn't have a car. I walked down the railroad tracks from the Bayou de Ville apartments on North McGregor and went in the registrar's office. They laughed me out of there because I hadn't taken the graduate record exam and I didn't have a transcript. I was going because my wife made me go over there that day. So on the way out of the building, I stopped by to speak to my cousin because she worked in an office, an administrative office. And I was brought up to say, you know, I would go to somebody's workplace without saying, hey, cuz, how you doing? I went in the office and said, hey, cuz, how you doing? I said, well, I was trying to get in school, but I didn't make it this semester. But everybody's scared about me going to Vietnam because I'm not a stand in the back kind of guy. I guess you kind of figured that out. Anyway, she said, come go with me. Those are the most famous words in my life in my book. Come go with me. She took me to the second floor of Hannah Hall to the dean's office in the law school because he was the only one that could admit students. The registrar had to admit all undergraduate and graduate students except the law school. She stayed in his office 20 minutes. He came out, gave me a $100 scholarship and admitted me to law school on the last day of late registration. And if it wasn't for but God, that God, I'd be on the jetties in Galveston fishing today, girl. That is true. It's as true as me sitting here on the last day of late registration. I didn't even know what lawyers did. You saw the grades I made. That wasn't, because the man told me, when my transcript did come from Prairie View, it had 32 F's on it. He called me in the hall and said, my God, man, you have 32 F's on your transcript. I said, I know it. You didn't ask me about that. You asked me, was I a graduate of Prairie View? And I said I was. And at the bottom it says I graduated. And I graduated. He said, you better make good grades. You're not gonna be able to stay here. Well, because I registered so late, I had to take his class in ethics. My first semester in law school was a senior course. Guess who amjured ethics? And I ain't had no problem with him since. God sent me here to do this work. And as long as I'm here and I got a mouth to talk and a license to go somewhere and represent somebody, I would be less than a man to do anything else.
Wow. Woo. Look, you're giving me chills over here.
Who will go for us? And I said, I'm ready. Send me.
Send me. You are giving me chills over here. And to our viewing audience, this is our special guest that I'm so happy agreed to join us for our Black History segment. And this is Living History. We're living it. And as a Black attorney, female attorney who had no one in my family to ever go this route, who came from the ghetto of Los Angeles, these are the people that are my heroes and heroines that I look up to. And so I wanted us to have a real experience with a real life person. When we talk about February Black History Month, we outdo that. We way outdo that. We have it every day of the year, and we have people on the front line that may be our neighbor, that may went to school with our parents, that are making Black history, that are a part of Black history. And so I wanted our viewing audience to be able to hear and witness what we have in our community, what we have as a legal community in terms of our Black lawyers, and what it is that we have had to endure, some of us, to get to the position that we're in. With this webinar series, that couldn't have been possible without Honorable Craig Washington. Some of the things that we are able to do today in the practice of law was not come by easily. People had to endure pain and had to really, like he said, to be courageous and to live on purpose and to live out their purpose. As you heard, as I heard, he was born to do this. This is what he was born to do. And it comes across in all of the things that we're hearing today, and even in his bio of what was shared about the caliber of the professional that we have talking to us today, and what it is to be a Black attorney then and now. As far as you know, we're talking about our Black history segment on today. So I'm just going to tell you, it gave me chills when you were talking, and I'm just so grateful that we have the ability to have you on the program today. And I am so thankful that I have people like you that I can look up to and that I can share with our viewing audience to know that this is real. This is real. Yes. So thank you so much.
Higher. Aim higher than me. Y'all can do it.
Man.
There's nothing to stop you.
And so how do you feel that Black attorneys have changed the legal system in Texas?
You asking me that?
Yes.
They made it reality instead of a game. When people are not invested in you, and they get up in the morning and brush their teeth because they got to look in the mirror to brush their teeth, and sometime or another they're going to look themselves in the eye. If they don't care no more about you than the fact that you might be paying them some money and helping them send their kids to college, they're not invested in you. You ought to represent everyone like it's your cousin or your mother or your sister. If you treat them all like that, all that anybody can ask is your best. The most thorough thing that the Honorable Thurgood Marshall ever said was, he was complimented. He said that I did the best I could with what I had. If you can just say that to yourself every day and mean it, that I did nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. We all fall short of glory. But if you can look yourself in the mirror the next day, after your motion gets overruled or whatever it is, your client gets found guilty, whatever you think's bad, and you can truly look yourself in the mirror and say, I did the best I could with what I had, nobody can ask any more of that from you. You're not perfect. You don't walk on water. If you do, your feet get wet. Come on now. This ain't no game. Like I was on a thing, this web thing a week before last with one of the judges, Judge Bauer had the judges and all this. And I'd say the same thing to them. First of all, make a record on everything. Don't be afraid to make a record. You know, the only friend you're gonna have when you go in the courtroom is the court reporter. I'm talking trial lawyer. I mean, you got office and all that stuff, mediation, all that's good. I'm not denigrating any of that. I was sitting here to be a trial lawyer. That's what I became. But you can't be afraid to make an objection because you think the judge don't like you. I told the judges, when you walk in the courtroom, everybody in the audience got a problem. Everybody you looking at, except the staff, maybe, they there because they got some kind of problem. They ain't there because it's a football game going on. It's either criminal or civil or domestic or something, a lawsuit or accident at a corner. And the least you can do is say good morning. The least you can do when you walk in there is say good morning. And most of them don't do that. And stop these lawyers, especially in the criminal side, some of the defense lawyers coming there hugging and high-fiving. That you don't need to do that. Them people looking at you, they don't trust lawyers anyway. You walking up there talking about some fun y'all gonna have together, that ain't the place for it. That'd be like a doctor standing over you while they cutting on you and they talk about where they gonna have a beer tonight. Don't do that. The people looking at you. And I told the judges to stop them from doing it. Make them be professional in the courtroom. Don't ever let any lawyer listen at the door while the jury's deliberation. I think that's the most horrendous thing that a lawyer can do. It's the worst thing. I have one mentee that I have disowned because she did. I caught her doing it. That's pernicious because then you get to know how they think. And if they find the client guilty, guess what? You're gonna know exactly where to strike. And that's not fair. And all anybody's entitled to is a fair trial, but everybody's entitled to a fair trial. The law says neither the rich man nor the poor man can sleep under the bridge. And that goes for both. I probably didn't answer your question. I'm sorry I get carried away. You know,
You're passionate, and I hear that you're saying that you were here to be a trial lawyer, and I'm one of those who love. I'm a mediator, but I'm going to tell you, I'm one of those who love trials. Actually, I like the whole thing about it in terms of the preparation, the performance, the cross-exam, everything about it. So I'm one of those who don't run or not intimidated, because sometimes people intimidate, we're going to take this to trial. I'm like, okay, let's go. And so I study you and I study others like you, who you can see have a passion for it and have the ability to do it really well. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because of course, again, that's another example that you provided and given to attorneys like myself, not only here in Texas, but everywhere, to be able to observe you and to learn from you. And so I'm 100% with you in that arena as well. In terms of the courtroom and our activity in the courtroom, we were speaking of earlier that we have some phenomenal attorneys in our community. Really, we do, who are really above and beyond, you know, some others in the area, in the practice of law. And so we want to always encourage and highlight those people in our community and those individuals to share like you're doing, and to give us some of those tips that you're saying in terms of professionalism and the practice of law, and what it is to be fair and honest, and how it is to be perceived by others who are, you know, depending on you to handle their matters. And so I thank you for that. You are dropping jewels to me. And I hope that we have those in the listening audience who are taking notes and just really taking in all of this greatness, really, that we're being able to hear from today. So thank you so much. We're going to wrap up. We have about another 10 minutes, and I'm going to give my co-host the opportunity to ask the last question, being that this was actually his idea. And I'm so happy that he introduced this idea to me as far as part of our Black History program in the series that we're doing. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Brother Athill.
You know, and I thank you, Sister Qiana, and thank you so very much again. You know, family, I'm just going to tell a real brief story or introduce a real brief story, and hope that, you know, Professor will be, you know, so kind to, you know, to run with it, if you will, not trying to be pejorative. I remember, you know, that we were representing Brother Tyrone. I always call everybody Brother Tyrone. That and for those who may not be familiar or aware, this was a young man who was accused of he was a truck driver, is what it amounts to, and 19 souls perished in the back of his semi tractor trailer truck. And you know, Professor was just by happenstance to be appointed on that case. And I remembered, you know, he had asked me and some other lawyers to assist him, and we actually had 2 trials. And I remember one day, this was over, I guess, between Christmas and New Year's, when we were at the office. I believe it was the second trial. It was a death penalty trial, and talking about the passion that Professor has. You know, he chided us one day because, just as he said, you know, that we should not, we need to carry ourselves in a perfect way, in a respectful way, and be mannered. And this young man was on trial for his life. And I remember we met at the office one Sunday, and we were getting ready for the penalty phase of the trial, where the jury was then to decide whether or not to put this brother to death. And I remember we were in the conference room, and I had called a meeting. If Professor, maybe he may not remember, but I had called this meeting. And the attorneys who were there, who were on the team, was, you know, like playing games, in my opinion. I think in Professor's opinion. And I sat on the, you know, the end of the table. Professor said, "No, brother, you call this meeting, you sit at the head of the table." And we went on to discuss, we rolled up our sleeves and discussed what it was that we needed to argue and put before the jury, so that this young man would not have a needle in his arm for something that he was not responsible for. Okay. I remember that during the time, one of the attorneys and I, Ms. Jenny Roberts, we were at the Federal Detention Center until about 5 o'clock one morning. And in 3 hours, we had to be back in Her Honor Rosenthal's courtroom arguing to save this man's life. And that is the passion that we heard from Professor Washington. And if he remembers, Professor, just if you would go just to, I guess, elucidate a bit on maybe if you remember that meeting, but even more so, the passion that an attorney, and particularly, I just have to say it, a Black attorney has to have when we are representing the disenfranchised, when we are representing those who are underrepresented. Because family, as I've said this on so many occasions, it could be us who were pulled over and falsely accused of something. We would want, in my opinion, somebody who has walked in the footsteps of Professor Washington, So Professor, all that being said, me using that story, what would be your advice to our young attorneys to have that sort of passion that you have and that you have instilled in me and so many others as we move forward, in 2021 and beyond?
Keep your eyes open. Watch everything around you. When you were talking, it reminded me of something else. I was in another town sleeping down in the valley when Tyrone passed in that truck. I didn't know Tyrone from Adam. I was teaching at the law school. I knew the dean of the law school. He was from New Haven, Connecticut. His sister went to a lawyer who had been the dean of the law school in New Haven, Connecticut, at our law school, Dean John Britton. John Britton got on the phone and called me not 30 minutes after I passed the location where that truck was on the side of the road. That's God again. I turned around and went back. That's how I ended up representing him. I wasn't appointed by the judge or anybody like that to represent him. I mean, I was appointed by Calvin Bodley, but he came to my attention because I passed the scene with all them police cars out there on the side of the road, them big old trucks with the big old antennas go up, look like they go up a mile in the sky. And my client was riding with me. I was bumming a ride back with him home. I said, boy, something bad wrong must have happened over there. So all I'm saying is, remember the least, the last, and the lost. They're always out there. You ain't got to look far to find them. Don't take them all. I'm not asking nobody to take them all, but take a few, spread them around. Once you get to know them, they're human beings just like the rest of us. We're all God's children, whatever we call God. And I think she's magnificent, God is. And she spreads the cards around. They ain't asking Athill to take all the cases. Athill couldn't wear them nice suits and bow ties and things and live like he does. But we're all in this together. Let's all share it. Help somebody as you pass along. You ain't got to help them all. God will send you somebody. All you got to do is have a willing mind and an open heart. God will send somebody that needs your help. One day a lady came in my office with a nun with her. She didn't know it, but the day she walked in there with the nun, I mean, how you gonna turn down somebody that's coming to help you? They ain't got no money, and she bring a nun with her. Come on now, Anyway, I said enough. Sister Qiana says time for us to get off. Ask yourself why you became a lawyer. How did you end up where you are? If you just look around at that and think of all the other things you could have been, or might have been, or would have been, or whatever, you didn't just get here by happenstance. You didn't end up where you are, sitting where you are, listening where you are, getting a law degree and doing all that just to make a pile of money, just to stack dollars or Benjamins or whatever they call them nowadays. How many cars can you drive at a time? How many swimming pools can you swim in? How many trips can you take to Vail? There are people sleeping under the police elevator tonight. They're gonna lay down there on Main Street right there by that McDonald's. They're gonna take a piece of cardboard and make a pillow out of it. There, but for the grace of God, go I.
There go I.
And you.
That's
go
right.
I. We're all the same children. We're all the same. Some of us got different jobs to do, but because God gave us a job, don't mean that the job was just to aggrandize ourselves and make a whole bunch of money. Money is just a medium of exchange. It's just a medium of exchange. They invented money. It wasn't real. So I'm done. Thank you. Thank y'all for listening.
Yes, sir. And so I wanted to just end on with this last, and this is the last question, just how did it feel? Because I know that you were here around the time when you all had to share a table at the law library, and now it is being changed to have and honor the name of an attorney that I believe that you had the opportunity to practice with. How did that feel with that happening now that you've been able to live and take this journey in the law? How did that make you feel?
Yeah, they used to have a colored docket. No matter if a black lawyer or a white lawyer represented a black defendant, you had to wait till all the white people's cases were disposed of on the docket before you got to speak. Same is true in the library. Hainsworth was his name. I'm the proud owner of the 1975 Robert Hainsworth Award. I have a window in my home that Heman Sweat looked out of when he was made to study law, not at the University of Texas Law School, but at the General Land Office building on 11th Street. I own the window. They want me to give it to UT. I may give it to Texas Southern because but for that, he was the raison d'etre of Texas Southern even existed. Anyway, if you don't watch yourself, it'll make you feel small. If you care, if you let yourself worry about what other people think about you, you've lost the battle already. They don't matter. I mean, they matter as human beings and we're all in this together, but if you let your life be determined by somebody as fleeting to you as somebody passing you on the freeway that makes you mad and you'll never see again because they're driving too close behind you or they're passing or something like that, you'll never see that person again in life. Why should you let that affect who you are or what your role is or what your purpose is here? You know, just make your objections. I was making Batson objections before there was a Batson. There's a colloquy that went on for 21 pages in a death penalty case that I tried. And the end of it said, if y'all gonna hang him, I'm not gonna hold the rope. I objected to them striking black people off the jury then, always did. Go in prepared, do your best, and when you get up in the morning brushing your teeth, said I did the best I could with what I had. That's about all you can ask. That's all they can ask of you. I wouldn't let myself feel little, because I'm the same little boy that climbed up on the chair on the bus and moved aside. There ain't nothing they can do to me. My mama taught me how to read. I asked her, what's the difference between white water and colored water? She grabbed me by the hand so tight and drugged me out of Woolsworth. I thought I had done something wrong. I'm walking behind her and said, what did I do? I could read and I could see the two signs, and I had logic to say, I wanted to taste that other water to see what it tastes like. Don't let anybody put you down. There ain't nothing on your law license any different from anybody else's law license. You got the right to stand up and speak up, but you got to make objections. You can't be afraid. You can't worry about whether the judge is going to point you to another case next week. One last thing, I went to juvenile court. I used to do a lot of juvenile when I first started practicing, because that's where I could get appointed. The judge is laughing, uh-oh, here comes Mr. Washington. Y'all better get ready for trial. Everybody started laughing. And I was standing in the middle of the aisle in the court. It was on the family law set. I waited, they stopped laughing and say, I thought that was why you appointed me, Judge. Of course it's why I appointed you, to do the best job you could. And if the best job you could mean going to trial, why should I be afraid or think that I'm gonna get less appointments for him, or care for that matter, if I don't get any more? God's gonna send me something to eat. I had a little baby. You know, you can't be intimidated by these people. If you're doing something wrong with them trying to intimidate you, they want to move the docket. I ain't never seen nobody go to the polling place on any election. I've been watching elections a long time and say, well, I'm going to vote for this judge because she disposed of more cases. That's all in their mind. They're afraid, but they shouldn't be afraid of how many cases. How did they dispose of them? Fairly? That's what I want to know. And I told them judges that at Shannon Baldwin's thing. We ain't caring about how many statistics you got, how many guilty pleas you got, how many probationers you got, how many cases, who's got the smallest docket. I ain't never seen a voter, and I've been facing voters for 50 years. I've never seen a voter, calm down. I've never seen a voter ask me, well, Craig, should I vote for this person or this person for judge? Which one disposes of the most cases annually? Come on now. Which one disposes of the cases fairly is the question, honestly. and as a judge and dispenses justice. That's what we're down there for. So my mind goes off like this, Sister Qiana, so I'm probably way off the beat on your question, but I just want to say that when I see young people, that's just what I want to say. Sometimes I just sit in the back of the courtroom and watch them, you know, be respectful, but don't be intimidated. They used to laugh at me when I got ready to leave the court. I'd always say, may it please the court, Your Honor, may I finish my business, may I be excused. I hear them snickering at me. I'm laughing at them for not knowing any better. I took a rose to every judge, woman judge, and clerk. I created court coordinators, by the way. I created the alternative dispute resolution. I passed that in the legislature. I'm not opposed to it. That's a good way of disposing of a lot of things. I mean, I was doing more than just criminal cases, criminal law in the legislature and civil rights and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that got my name on it. People ain't got time to study it. I don't care about it. I didn't do it so they would pat me on the back. But I used being in the legislature as a tool. Grand juries, and when they reinstated the death penalty in 1973, I had an amendment that said if a police officer killed a citizen while a police officer was in the course of duty and a jury found him guilty of murder, give them the death penalty. That was in 73. I've been watching all the while, and I ain't never stopped watching. And I ain't gonna never stop until good Lord come and get me. Peace.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, you gave me more than what I asked you, but I'm so happy that you did. I'm so happy that you did.
It's on my heart.
Yes, I'm so happy that you did. So again, to our audience, we pray that you got this gift today for Black history. And we're going to continue to be Black and create Black history 365 days of the year. So we are honored that Mr. Washington joined us today, and grateful to our panelists in our first segment for joining us on mediation and alternative dispute resolution. So with that, we're going to close out today and pray that you take something and you use it for yourself and that you share it. And again, this is Qiana Manns with Manns Law Office. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Manns Law Offices, and we are here to serve you. My number is 713-589-6404. And my co-host can offer his information and we'll close it out.
And I can be reached on my direct line, 713-807-8167, and also at our general office number, 713-589-6404, where our more than capable assistant, Sister Patricia, will handle everything that's needed to be handled. And my website is www.your, Y-O-U-R, the number 4, Justice. I'm sorry, your search for justice.com. I was just, but that's the website, family. And I'm just really, so honored and thankful that, that as I said, he's my friend, my mentor, my professor, Professor Washington. And thank you so very much. And my brother, thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time. And we'll look to reconvene, wa alaikum salam, and we'll look to reconvene next month for our next webinar, Allow Spare My Life, in the month of April.
Thank you, guys.
Y'all be well and stay safe down there.
Thank you.